Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into one of life's biggest questions. Who are you really? We're going to explore two incredibly powerful theories that give us completely different but equally fascinating blueprints for understanding our own personality.
So let's just jump right in. What actually makes you, well, you? Is your personality some fixed set of traits you've had forever? Or is it something that's constantly changing and evolving with everything you experience? Let's start with a perspective that puts you firmly in the driver's seat.
All right, first up, we've got the psychologist George Kelly. And he had this amazing idea that every single one of us is basically a personal scientist, always trying to figure out and predict the world around us.
So, get this. According to Kelly, your personality isn't just a bunch of labels like introverted or funny. Nope. It's the unique system of mental rules, these constructs, that you've personally built to make sense of everything. You're not just reacting to life, you're actively creating theories about it.
Okay, but where do these mental rules even come from? How do they actually build the person we are today? Let's take a look at how this process unfolds, starting right from when we're kids. These constructs are the absolute building blocks. You can think of them like these little mental sliders we use to size everything up. Is this person kind or unkind? Is this situation safe or unsafe? These aren't just ideas. They're the tools you use moment to guess what's going to happen next.
For Kelly, this whole thing is a constant loop, a cycle that never really stops. First, you create a rule based on something you've experienced. Then you test that rule out in the real world, like a little experiment. You start acting based on that rule. And then, and this is the key part, when that rule fails, you feel things like anxiety. And that feeling is what pushes you to go back and rethink your rule. It's how we grow.
Let's make this real with an example. So imagine Anjali. When she was a little kid, she learned a really simple equation. Good grades meant she got praise and attention. Bad grades, not so much. From that, she built this really powerful core belief, a construct. Love equals approval.
And you can see how this plays out, right? Her whole personality started to organize itself around that one single rule. She became a perfectionist. She started avoiding any situation where she thought she might fail. And she lived with this constant, buzzing anxiety, always looking for someone else to tell her she was doing a good job.
But here's the cool part. Life throws a curveball. In college, she meets a mentor who doesn't care about her grades at all. This mentor values her for her creativity, for her unique ideas. Suddenly, her old rule, love equals approval, doesn't work anymore. This clash, this anxiety, forces her to revise her internal map. She starts to learn, hey, maybe I can be valued for just being me. And right there, in that moment, her personality literally grows.
Okay, so Kelly's theory is powerful, but it's all happening inside our heads, isn't it? It's all about our own mental maps. But what about the terrain itself? What about all those invisible currents and pressures out in the world that are constantly pushing and pulling on us? It's time to look at this from a totally different angle.
And that brings us to Kurt Lewin, a giant in social psychology. For him, personality wasn't some static thing locked inside you. It was something that existed in a dynamic, ever-changing psychological field.
And Lewin, he managed to boil down his entire theory into this one beautifully simple formula. Behavior is a function of the person and their environment. Now that might sound kind of obvious at first, but trust me, the magic is all in how he defined environment.
Now this is absolutely crucial. When Lewin says environment, he is not talking about the physical room you're sitting in. Not at all. He's talking about your psychological world as you perceive it right now, your subjective reality. It's the sum of all your hopes, your fears, your goals, and the social pressures you feel in this very moment. He had a great name for this whole subjective reality, your life space. I want you to picture it like your own personal weather map. On that map, there are regions that pull you in, like a goal you're passionate about, and other regions that push you away, like a fear of public speaking. Your personality is basically the way you navigate this map.
Okay, so how does this life space actually work? How does it shape who we are? Well, it's all about the interplay of these invisible forces, these psychological pushes and pulls we're dealing with every single day.
So in Lewin's world, things you want, goals, people, whatever, they have what he called a positive valence. They're like magnets pulling you forward. And things you don't want have a negative valence. They're actively pushing you away. Your personality, then, is really just the collection of strategies you've developed to manage all of these competing forces.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because Lewin believed that our personality, our stable, predictable patterns, they come from how we handle these conflicts day in and day out. For example, if you're often faced with two great choices, an approach-approach conflict, you might develop a curious, energetic personality. But if you're always stuck choosing the lesser of two evils, an avoidance-avoidance conflict, that can lead to anxiety and indecisiveness. And that last one, the approach avoidance, where a goal is both exciting and terrifying, that's the classic recipe for an ambitious but self-doubting personality. Sound familiar?
All right, so let's just take a breath. We've just looked at two totally different, but both super compelling ways of seeing you. One view looks from the inside out, and the other from the outside in.
Let's break it down one more time. Kelly's theory is all about you being the scientist who draws the map of your own reality. The big question for Kelly is, what are my rules? But Lewin sees you as a navigator, constantly charting a course through a dynamic field of invisible forces. His question is, what forces are acting on me right now? And that really brings us to the big question for you. When you think about your own life, which one feels more true? Are you the scientist, defined by the internal rules you've created? Or are you the navigator, shaped by how you respond to the pressures all around you? The most complete picture, perhaps, isn't about choosing one or the other, but realizing that at every single moment, you are both the mapmaker and the navigator on this incredible journey of being you.